There are moments in a man's life when he encounters something in a woman he cannot name. It is not just her beauty, not merely the way she moves, speaks, or smiles. It is something deeper, something ancient, a sensation that unravels him without force. You may have felt it too, that quiet storm behind her eyes, not loud but powerful, not violent but impossible to ignore. It enters you like a fragrance you can't place, lingers like a memory you never lived, and for reasons you don't understand, you find yourself disarmed, softened, even surrendered. Brother, this isn't poetry, this is psychology. More precisely, this is Jung. Carl Jung understood that what we call attraction is not a surface-level reaction. It is a collision of symbols, shadows, and subconscious desires. When a man is drawn to a woman so intensely that he forgets himself, it is not the woman he is truly seeing. It is the anima, the feminine image that lives in his unconscious, shaped by every mother, lover, and mystery he's ever known. This is not love in its mature form. It is projection, an involuntary flooding of the psyche with qualities that do not belong to her, but to you. Jung didn't look at the feminine through the eyes of cynicism or resentment. He approached it as a sacred puzzle, as the unknown half of the human soul. And what he discovered wasn't a condemnation of women, but a confrontation with man's own blindness. The anima is not evil. She is the gatekeeper of emotional truth, but if unrecognized, she can be dangerous. Not because she intends harm, but because we follow her blindly. We do not question the feeling, we surrender to the spell. And that's where the danger lies. In modern life, we are trained to dismiss what we can't quantify. We pretend feelings are just hormones, we reduce attraction to chemistry. But Jung knew better. He saw in every romantic obsession the echo of an inner split, the longing of a man not for another, but for a part of himself he's never dared to meet. The unconscious has no mercy for ignorance. What you fail to recognize will dominate you. This is why so many men find themselves falling for women who seem to hold impossible power over their emotions. It isn't her smile that undoes you. It's what her presence awakens in your shadow, your unmet longing, your forgotten hunger, your unresolved wounds. She becomes the canvas for all of it. You think you're loving her, but you're chasing a ghost stitched from your own psyche. And when she pulls away, when she doesn't return the fire with equal heat, you suffer. Not because she broke you, but because your illusion collapsed. This is not cruelty, this is reflection.
The feminine, in Jung's view, is not linear. It is layered, instinctive, complex. She lives closer to nature, to intuition, to cycles. She does not function like a man, nor should she. But when a man fails to understand this, he begins to demand order from what was never meant to be ordered. He asks her to behave logically, to explain herself, to fit into his rational framework. And when she doesn't, he feels betrayed. But Jung would ask, who betrayed whom? The feminine didn't fail you. Your illusion did. You see, the psyche doesn't care about comfort. It cares about growth. And every time you fall for a woman you don't understand, every time you elevate her into a goddess, every time you wrap your entire sense of self around her reaction to you, you are not engaging with her. You're engaging with your shadow. And when the spell breaks, when reality returns, when she leaves or changes or simply stops responding, your world crumbles. Not because she was your world, but because you made her into it. Jung believed this is the root of many men's suffering, not the woman herself, but the unconscious dependency they create in relation to her. Dependency masquerading as romance, projection masquerading as destiny, obsession disguised as connection. He wrote of the need for individuation, the process of becoming whole, not by merging with another, but by integrating the parts of ourselves we've abandoned. The anima, when unrecognized, leads men into fantasy. But when embraced and integrated, she becomes a guide, leading him into emotional maturity, creativity, intuition, and depth. But make no mistake, this integration demands discipline, It requires a man to question his feelings instead of chasing them. To ask, what part of me is she reflecting? Instead of, how do I win her back? You see, the woman who captivates you without explanation is not a mistake. She is a messenger. But she is not the message. She is the mirror. And what you see in her is what you are missing in yourself. Jung never told men to resist women. He told them to understand the symbols, to decode the dreams, to recognize that romantic energy is psychic energy, and it flows from the same source that fuels your art, your mission, your transformation. But most men never ask the deeper question. They just fall, and they keep falling, into arms, into beds, into roles they think will make them loved. They fall without a map, and when they're not caught, they call her cold. She isn't cold. She is what she always was, chaotic, intuitive, selective. But nature didn't design her to save you. That is your task. That is your responsibility. And that is the beginning of your liberation, the ghost that lives inside you. Every man carries something invisible within him. It's not his thoughts or memories. It's deeper than that. Jung called it the anima, the feminine spirit that shapes how you see every woman you meet. This isn't some mystical nonsense. This is your psychological blueprint. Think about the last time you felt drawn to someone you barely knew. Something about her made your heart race before she even spoke. That wasn't attraction to her specifically. That was your anima recognizing herself in another person. She's been with you since birth, formed by your mother's touch, your sister's laughter, every feminine energy that ever crossed your path. The anima doesn't care about logic. She operates on feeling, intuition, and ancient wisdom your rational mind can't grasp. When you meet a woman who triggers this inner feminine, you're not responding to who she really is. You're responding to who she represents in your unconscious world. This creates a dangerous situation. Your anima makes you see qualities in women that might not exist. She makes you fall for potential rather than reality. She whispers that this woman will complete you, heal your wounds, make you whole. But completion doesn't come from outside. It comes from recognizing and integrating this feminine energy within yourself. Most men live their entire lives without knowing this ghost exists. They chase woman after woman, always feeling like something's missing. They blame their loneliness on bad luck or timing. They never realize they're actually chasing their own shadow, projected onto every female face they desire. The anima has 4 stages of development. First, she appears as the pure maiden, innocent, perfect, untouchable. Then she becomes the seductress, mysterious, alluring, dangerous. Next, she transforms into the mother, nurturing, wise, protective. Finally, she emerges as the wise woman, spiritual, knowing, complete. Understanding which stage you're stuck in reveals everything about your relationship patterns. If you only see women as maids or seductresses, you're operating from the earliest stages. You're not ready for real partnership because you're still projecting childhood needs onto adult relationships. The ghost inside you wants to be seen, understood, integrated. When you ignore her, she grows stronger and more demanding. She makes you obsess over women who seem to carry her energy. She makes you lose yourself in romantic fantasies. She makes you believe that love means surrendering your identity to another person. But here's what Jung discovered. The anima isn't your enemy. She's your guide to emotional depth, creativity, and spiritual growth. When you stop projecting her onto women and start developing a relationship with her directly, everything changes. You become more attractive because you're complete within yourself. You stop needing women to fill your emptiness because you filled it yourself. This doesn't mean becoming feminine or losing your masculine edge. It means becoming whole. It means accessing the intuitive wisdom that most men have shut down since childhood, It means understanding emotions not as weakness, but as information about your inner world. The ghost that lives inside you isn't trying to possess you. She's trying to teach you. Every time you fall hard for someone who doesn't return your feelings, ask yourself, what quality in her am I trying to develop in myself? What part of my feminine side am I projecting onto her? This question will save you years of heartbreak and confusion. Because once you understand that the woman you're chasing is actually a reflection of your own undeveloped potential, you can start working on yourself instead of trying to capture her. You can start building a relationship with your inner feminine instead of desperately seeking her in others. By the way, if you're curious to go even deeper and integrate your shadows and light, check out the SIM Method ebook. It's a concise guide that can help you unlock your inner power in just 5 minutes a day. The link is in the first pinned comment below. Why she doesn't need to do anything to win you over. Here's something that will blow your mind. The women who affect you most deeply are often doing absolutely nothing to attract you. They're not flirting, not trying to impress you, not even aware of your existence. Yet somehow, they have more power over your emotions than women who are actively pursuing you. This happens because real attraction isn't about what she does. It's about what she triggers in your unconscious mind. Jung understood that we're drawn to people who carry the energy of our unfinished psychological business. The woman who captivates you without effort is reflecting something back to you that you desperately need to see about yourself. She might be completely ordinary by most standards, average looking, normal job, regular personality. But something about her presence activates your anima so powerfully that you can't think straight. You start imagining conversations you've never had, planning a future she's never agreed to, feeling emotions she's never encouraged. This is projection at its most intense. You're not falling for her. You're falling for what she represents in your inner world. She becomes the screen onto which you project all your unmet needs, unexpressed desires, and unlived possibilities. She doesn't have to seduce you because your own psychology is doing all the work. Meanwhile, women who are obviously interested in you might leave you cold. They're available, attractive, compatible. They're doing everything right, according to dating advice. But they don't trigger your anima, so they feel flat, boring, predictable. You appreciate them intellectually but feel nothing emotionally. This creates a terrible pattern. You chase women who don't want you while ignoring women who do. You interpret indifference as mystery and availability as desperation. You mistake your own psychological projections for deep connection and mutual interest for shallow compatibility. The woman who doesn't need to do anything understands something crucial. Her power comes from being herself, not from performing for male attention. She's comfortable with her own energy, secure in her own skin, focused on her own life. This self-possession is magnetic because it reflects the inner wholeness that your anima craves. She's not playing hard to get. She genuinely has other priorities. She's not being mysterious. She simply doesn't feel the need to explain herself to everyone. She's not rejecting you personally. She's just not available for the role you want her to play in your psychological drama. This drives many men crazy because they're used to cause and effect relationships. Do something nice. Get appreciation. Work hard. Get results. Show interest. Get interest back. But with these women, the normal rules don't apply. Your efforts don't move the needle. Your charm doesn't work. Your persistence doesn't pay off. That's because she's operating from a completely different paradigm. She's not looking for someone to complete her or validate her worth. She's not desperate for male attention or approval. She's living her own life according to her own values and your desire for her doesn't automatically become her problem to solve. This can be maddening for men who are used to being able to influence outcomes through effort and strategy. But it's also liberating once you understand what's really happening. Her indifference isn't a challenge to overcome. It's information about your own psychological development. When you find yourself obsessing over someone who barely notices you exist, ask yourself, what quality does she have that I'm lacking? What aspect of wholeness is she modeling that I need to develop? How can I become as self-possessed and centered as she appears to be? The goal isn't to win her over. The goal is to become the kind of person who doesn't need to win anyone over. When you develop the same self-possession that attracts you to her, you'll stop being drawn to unavailable people. You'll start appreciating those who are actually interested in building something real with you. The mirror you. Mistake for love. What you call love is often just your own reflection staring back at you. Jung discovered that we don't fall in love with people. We fall in love with our projections onto them. The woman who makes your heart race isn't casting a spell on you. She's simply reflecting back the parts of yourself you haven't learned to recognize yet. This is why love at first sight feels so magical and overwhelming. You're not seeing her clearly. You're seeing your own potential, your own unlived possibilities, your own inner feminine reflected in her presence. It's like looking into a mirror that shows you not who you are, but who you could become. The qualities that fascinate you most about her are usually the qualities you need to develop in yourself. If you're drawn to her creativity, you probably need more creative expression in your own life. If you're captivated by her independence, you likely need to become more self-reliant. If you're enchanted by her emotional depth, you probably need to explore your own feelings more honestly. But instead of doing the inner work, you try to possess these qualities by possessing her. You think that by winning her love, you'll gain access to what she represents. This is why men often become obsessed with women who embody their undeveloped potential. They're trying to shortcut their own growth by merging with someone who already has what they lack. This creates impossible expectations. You need her to be perfect because she's carrying the projection of your ideal self. You need her to never disappoint you because disappointment would shatter the illusion that she's your missing piece. You need her to love you unconditionally because her love represents self-acceptance you haven't achieved yet. The mirror shows you what you want to see, not what's actually there. You fill in gaps in your knowledge of her with fantasy. You interpret her neutral behavior as special interest. You read deep meaning into casual interactions. You build an entire relationship in your mind while she's just living her normal life. This is why getting to know someone better often leads to disappointment. Reality rarely matches projection. The real person has flaws, moods, bad days, and human limitations. She's not the goddess your anima painted her to be. She's just a person trying to figure out her own life, just like you. The crash comes when the mirror breaks, when she does something that contradicts your projection, when she shows interest in someone else, when she reveals aspects of herself that don't match your fantasy. Suddenly you feel betrayed, even though she never agreed to be your projection screen in the first place. This isn't her fault. She didn't ask to carry your unlived potential. She didn't sign up to be your missing piece. She was just being herself while you were seeing yourself reflected in her presence. The betrayal you feel isn't about her actions. It's about the collapse of your own illusion. Real love begins when projection ends, when you can see someone clearly without needing them to be anything other than who they are. When you can appreciate their actual qualities instead of the qualities you've projected onto them. When you can love them for themselves, not for what they represent in your psychological development. This requires brutal honesty about your own motivations. Every time you feel intense attraction to someone new, Ask yourself, what am I seeing in them that I need to develop in myself? What quality are they reflecting that I'm lacking? How can I cultivate this quality directly instead of trying to possess it through them? The mirror isn't the enemy. It's showing you valuable information about your own growth edges. But you have to stop trying to climb through the looking glass and start doing the work of becoming whole within yourself. Only then can you love someone for who they really are, not for who you need them to be. The trap of the imaginary goddess. You've created a goddess in your mind, and now you're trapped worshipping at an altar that doesn't exist. This imaginary divine feminine seems more real than any actual woman because she's perfect, understanding, and completely devoted to you. She never disappoints, never disagrees, never has needs that conflict with yours. She's everything you've ever wanted in a partner, and she lives entirely in your imagination. This goddess is dangerous because she makes real women seem inadequate by comparison. No actual human can compete with a fantasy that's been crafted specifically to meet your every need. Real women have their own desires, opinions, and limitations. They have bad days, make mistakes, and sometimes put their needs before yours. The imaginary goddess never does any of these things. Jung recognized this as one of the most destructive aspects of anima projection. When men create an idealized feminine in their minds, they become unable to love real women. Every actual relationship falls short of the fantasy. Every real person seems flawed compared to the perfect image they've constructed. The trap works like this. You meet someone who triggers your anima strongly. Instead of getting to know her as she really is, you immediately begin filling in the blanks with your ideal fantasy. You assume she shares your values, wants what you want, thinks the way you think. You project your perfect woman onto her before she's even had a chance to show you who she actually is. This creates a relationship with a ghost. You're not dating her. You're dating your projection of her. You're not in love with her personality. You're in love with the personality you've imagined she has. You're not attracted to her real qualities. You're attracted to the qualities you've assigned to her in your mind. The imaginary goddess whispers lies to you. She tells you that this woman is special, different from all the others. She convinces you that this time it's real, that you've finally found your soulmate. She makes you believe that if you just try hard enough, the real person will transform into the fantasy you've created. But reality has a way of intruding on fantasy. The real woman does things the goddess never would. She has interests you don't share. She makes decisions you don't understand. She responds to your advances with confusion instead of gratitude. Slowly, the illusion begins to crack. Instead of adjusting your expectations to match reality, you often double down on the fantasy. You explain away her behavior that doesn't fit your projection. You wait for her to become who you know she really is deep down. You invest more energy trying to turn her into your imaginary goddess instead of accepting who she actually is. This is exhausting for everyone involved. You're constantly disappointed because reality keeps falling short of fantasy. She's confused because you're responding to someone who doesn't exist. She can sense that you're not really seeing her, that you're in love with some version of her that only exists in your head. The goddess demands worship, but she gives nothing back because she isn't real. You sacrifice time, energy, and emotional stability trying to win the love of someone who only exists in your imagination. Meanwhile, opportunities for real connection pass you by because you're too busy chasing shadows. Breaking free from this trap requires giving up the fantasy, which feels like losing something precious. The imaginary goddess has been comforting you, making you feel special, promising you perfect love. Letting her go means accepting that love is messy, imperfect, and requires compromise. It means accepting that no one will ever be exactly what you want them to be. But here's what you gain: the possibility of real intimacy. When you stop worshipping fantasies, you can start appreciating real people. When you give up the perfect woman in your head, you might notice the imperfect but genuine woman standing right in front of you. When you stop demanding that people be your goddess, you might discover that human connection is actually more satisfying than divine worship. The trap of the imaginary goddess is comfortable, but it's still a trap. You can choose to stay there, safe in your fantasies, or you can choose the harder path of engaging with reality. Real love requires giving up the perfect partner you've imagined in favor of the imperfect person you can actually build something with. Why you suffer when she pulls away? The pain you feel when she distances herself isn't really about her. It's about the collapse of your own psychological structure. You've built your sense of self around her attention, her approval, her presence in your life. When she pulls away, it's not just losing her. It's losing the version of yourself that only existed in relation to her. This is why the suffering feels so disproportionate to the actual relationship. Maybe you only went on a few dates. Maybe you never even officially got together. Maybe she was never anything more than a friend who gave you some attention. But the pain feels like losing a part of your soul, because in a way, you have. Jung understood that when we project our anima onto someone, we essentially give them our psychological power. We make them responsible for our emotional well-being, our sense of worth, our feeling of completeness. When they withdraw that energy, we don't just feel rejected. We feel empty, lost, fundamentally broken. The suffering comes from dependency, not love. Real love wants the best for the other person, even if that doesn't include you. But when you're projecting your anima, you don't want what's best for her. You want what's best for your psychological stability. You need her to stay interested because your self-image depends on her interest. This creates a desperate energy that actually pushes people away. When someone senses that you need them more than you want them, when they feel the weight of your psychological dependency, most healthy people will create distance. They can feel that you're not relating to them as a person, but as a function in your psychological drama. The panic you feel when she pulls away reveals how much of your identity you've surrendered to her. You've made her the center of your emotional universe, the source of your happiness, the key to your self-worth. When she's not available to play that role anymore, you don't know who you are or what you're worth. This is why some men become obsessive when women withdraw. They can't accept the loss because it feels like psychological death. They interpret her distance as a problem to solve rather than information to respect. They increase their efforts, become more persistent, more charming, more desperate. They can't understand why she's not responding to their intensity. But intensity isn't attractive when it comes from neediness. Passion is beautiful when it comes from fullness, from someone who has something to give. But when it comes from emptiness, from someone who needs to take, it feels suffocating. She can sense that your feelings aren't really about her. They're about what you need from her. The withdrawal often has nothing to do with you, personally. Maybe she's dealing with her own issues. Maybe she's not ready for a relationship. Maybe she's interested in someone else. Maybe she just doesn't feel the same connection you do. All of these are normal parts of human interaction, but they feel like personal attacks when your self-worth depends on her approval. Understanding this pattern is the first step to breaking it. Every time you feel desperate when someone pulls away, ask yourself, what am I really losing here? Am I mourning the loss of a real relationship? Or am I mourning the loss of my fantasy? Am I sad because I care about her? or because I need her validation to feel okay about myself. The goal isn't to stop caring about people. The goal is to care about them without making them responsible for your emotional stability. When you can maintain your sense of self regardless of how others respond to you, you become much more attractive. People want to be with someone who chooses them, not someone who needs them. Real suffering comes from attachment to outcomes you can't control. When you need someone to feel a certain way about you, to respond in a specific manner, to prioritize you above their own needs, you're setting yourself up for constant disappointment. People are autonomous beings with their own lives, desires, and priorities. The liberation comes when you realize that your worth doesn't depend on anyone else's opinion of you. When you can appreciate someone's interest without needing it, when you can accept their distance without taking it personally, when you can care about someone without requiring them to care back in the same way, that's when you're free. The power you give away without realizing. Every time you put a woman on a pedestal, you're handing over your personal power without even realizing it. You think you're being respectful, romantic, devoted. But what you're actually doing is making her opinion of you more important than your own opinion of yourself. You're giving her the authority to determine your worth, your mood, your entire sense of well-being. This power transfer happens gradually, so you don't notice it at first. It starts with checking your phone constantly, hoping for her message. Then you begin changing your plans around her availability. Soon you're censoring your thoughts and opinions to avoid disagreeing with her. Before you know it, you've become a shadow of yourself, desperately trying to maintain her approval. Jung saw this as one of the most dangerous aspects of anima projection. When you project your inner feminine onto a woman, you essentially give her godlike power over your emotional state. Her smile can make your whole day. Her frown can ruin your week. Her attention becomes your drug, and her withdrawal becomes your withdrawal. This isn't love, it's addiction. And like any addiction, it requires increasingly larger doses to achieve the same high. First, a text message makes you happy. Then you need a phone call. Then you need to see her in person. Then you need her exclusive attention. The bar keeps rising because you're trying to fill an internal void with external validation. Meanwhile, she can sense this dynamic, and it makes her uncomfortable. Healthy people don't want to be responsible for someone else's emotional stability. When she realizes that your happiness depends entirely on her behavior, she feels burdened, trapped, maybe even guilty. This is why many women pull away when men become too emotionally dependent. The power you give away is your power to define yourself. Instead of knowing who you are independent of her opinion, you become whatever you think will make her happy. You lose your center, your authenticity, your core identity. You become a people pleaser, a chameleon, a performer in your own life. This creates a terrible irony. The more power you give her over your emotions, the less attractive you become. Confidence is magnetic, but desperation repels. Self-possession draws people in, but neediness pushes them away. By trying so hard to win her approval, you often end up losing her respect. The power you surrender isn't just emotional, it's creative, spiritual, and vital. When your energy is consumed by wondering what she thinks of you, you have no energy left for your own growth, your own goals, your own life. You become reactive instead of proactive, dependent instead of independent, weak instead of strong. This pattern often stems from childhood, where you learned that love was conditional on being good, pleasing others, avoiding conflict. You learned that your worth depended on other people's approval, that you were only valuable when you were making someone else happy. These patterns feel normal because they're familiar, but they're actually toxic to healthy relationships. Real power comes from self-definition. When you know who you are, regardless of how others respond to you. When you can maintain your center even when someone you care about is upset with you. When you can offer love without needing it, returned in a specific way. That's when you're operating from a position of strength. This doesn't mean becoming cold or indifferent. It means caring about people without making them responsible for your emotional well-being. It means being able to love someone while maintaining your own identity. It means giving from fullness rather than trying to get from emptiness. The first step to reclaiming your power is awareness. Start noticing when you're checking your phone obsessively, when you're changing your behavior to avoid her disapproval, when you're feeling anxious because you don't know what she's thinking. These are signs that you've given away too much of yourself. Then practice small acts of self-reclamation. Make plans that don't involve her. Spend time with friends she doesn't know. Pursue interests she doesn't share. Have opinions she might not agree with. Remember what you enjoyed before she became the center of your universe. The goal isn't to become selfish or uncaring. The goal is to become someone who has something real to offer because you're not desperately trying to get something in return. When you reclaim your power, you become more attractive, more interesting, more valuable as a partner. And if she doesn't appreciate that, then she wasn't the right person for you anyway. The power you give away without realizing. Every time you put a woman on a pedestal, you're handing over your personal power without even realizing it. You think you're being respectful, romantic, devoted. But what you're actually doing is making her opinion of you more important than your own opinion of yourself. You're giving her the authority to determine your worth, your mood, your entire sense of well-being. This power transfer happens gradually, so you don't notice it at first. It starts with checking your phone constantly, hoping for her message. Then you begin changing your plans around her availability. Soon you're censoring your thoughts and opinions to avoid disagreeing with her. Before you know it, you've become a shadow of yourself, desperately trying to maintain her approval. Jung saw this as one of the most dangerous aspects of anima projection. When you project your inner feminine onto a woman, you essentially give her godlike power over your emotional state. Her smile can make your whole day. Her frown can ruin your week. Her attention becomes your drug, and her withdrawal becomes your withdrawal. This isn't love. It's addiction. And like any addiction, it requires increasingly larger doses to achieve the same high. First, a text message makes you happy. Then you need a phone call. Then you need to see her in person. Then you need her exclusive attention. The bar keeps rising because you're trying to fill an internal void with external validation. Meanwhile, she can sense this dynamic, and it makes her uncomfortable. Healthy people don't want to be responsible for someone else's emotional stability. When she realizes that your happiness depends entirely on her behavior, she feels burdened, trapped, maybe even guilty. This is why many women pull away when men become too emotionally dependent. The power you give away is your power to define yourself. Instead of knowing who you are independent of her opinion, you become whatever you think will make her happy. You lose your center, your authenticity, your core identity. You become a people pleaser, a chameleon, a performer in your own life. This creates a terrible irony. The more power you give her over your emotions, the less attractive you become. Confidence is magnetic, but desperation repels. Self-possession draws people in, but neediness pushes them away. By trying so hard to win her approval, you often end up losing her respect. The power you surrender isn't just emotional. It's creative, spiritual, and vital. When your energy is consumed by wondering what she thinks of you, you have no energy left for your own growth, your own goals, your own life. You become reactive instead of proactive, dependent instead of independent, weak instead of strong. This pattern often stems from childhood, where you learned that love was conditional on being good, pleasing others, avoiding conflict. You learned that your worth depended on other people's approval, that you were only valuable when you were making someone else happy. These patterns feel normal because they're familiar, but they're actually toxic to healthy relationships. Real power comes from self-definition. When you know who you are, regardless of how others respond to you, when you can maintain your center even when someone you care about is upset with you, when you can offer love without needing it returned in a specific way, that's when you're operating from a position of strength. This doesn't mean becoming cold or indifferent. It means caring about people without making them responsible for your emotional well-being. It means being able to love someone while maintaining your own identity. It means giving from fullness rather than trying to get from emptiness. The first step to reclaiming your power is awareness. Start noticing when you're checking your phone obsessively, when you're changing your behavior to avoid her disapproval, when you're feeling anxious because you don't know what she's thinking. These are signs that you've given away too much of yourself. Then practice small acts of self-reclamation. Make plans that don't involve her. Spend time with friends she doesn't know. Pursue interests she doesn't share. Have opinions she might not agree with. Remember what you enjoyed before she became the center of your universe. The goal isn't to become selfish or uncaring. The goal is to become someone who has something real to offer because you're not desperately trying to get something in return. When you reclaim your power, you become more attractive, more interesting, more valuable as a partner. And if she doesn't appreciate that, then she wasn't the right person for you anyway. 7. The difference between loving and projecting. Love sees clearly. Projection sees what it wants to see. This is the fundamental difference that most people never understand, which is why so many relationships fail before they even begin. When you're projecting onto someone, you're not actually loving them. You're loving your fantasy of them. You're loving what they represent in your psychological world, not who they actually are. Real love requires knowing someone, not just the parts of them that fit your ideal, but their flaws, their fears, their ordinary human limitations. Love accepts the whole person, not just the highlighted version. Projection, on the other hand, fills in the blanks with fantasy and ignores anything that doesn't match the ideal. When you love someone, you want them to be happy, even if their happiness doesn't include you. When you're projecting, you want them to be happy only in ways that serve your needs. Love is generous and selfless. Projection is needy and self-serving, even when it appears to be giving. Jung understood that projection is essentially selfish. You're not concerned with the other person's actual well-being. You're concerned with maintaining the illusion that makes you feel good. You're not interested in their real thoughts and feelings. You're interested in the thoughts and feelings you've assigned to them in your imagination. This is why projection often feels more intense than love. It's fueled by your own psychological needs, your own unmet desires, your own unlived potential. The energy is coming from inside you, not from a genuine connection with another person. It's like being in love with your own reflection, which is why it feels so consuming and overwhelming. Love is patient because it's based on reality, and reality unfolds slowly. Projection is impatient because it's based on fantasy, and fantasy wants immediate gratification. When you love someone, you're willing to wait for them to reveal themselves naturally. When you're projecting, you want them to be who you need them to be right now. Real love involves uncertainty. You can't control how someone will grow, what they'll choose, or how they'll respond to life's challenges. Love accepts this uncertainty as part of caring about someone who has their own free will. Projection tries to eliminate uncertainty by controlling the narrative, by making the other person fit into your predetermined story. The difference shows up in how you handle conflict. Love can survive disagreement because it's based on accepting the other person as they are. Projection can't handle conflict because it threatens the fantasy. When someone you're projecting onto does something that contradicts your image of them, it feels like betrayal. Love grows deeper over time as you truly get to know someone. Projection fades over time as reality gradually destroys the fantasy. This is why relationships based on projection often have an expiration date. They can't survive the accumulated weight of reality. When you love someone, you're curious about their inner world. You want to understand their perspective, their experiences, their unique way of seeing things. When you're projecting, you assume you already know what they think and feel because you've made them up in your head. Love involves sacrifice, but it's willing sacrifice. You choose to prioritize someone else's needs because you genuinely care about their well-being. Projection involves sacrifice too, but it's desperate sacrifice. You give up parts of yourself hoping to maintain the illusion, hoping to keep them playing the role you've assigned them. The transition from projection to love is painful because it requires giving up the fantasy. You have to let go of the perfect person you've imagined in favor of the imperfect person who actually exists. You have to accept that they might not be your soulmate, your missing piece, your salvation. But this transition is also liberating. When you stop projecting onto someone, you can start loving them. When you stop needing them to be your fantasy, you can appreciate them for who they really are. When you stop trying to make them fit your story, you can become genuinely curious about their story. The question to ask yourself is simple but difficult. Am I loving this person, or am I loving what I think this person is? Am I accepting them as they are, or am I waiting for them to become who I want them to be? Am I interested in their reality, or am I more invested in my fantasy? Honest answers to these questions will reveal whether you're capable of love, or if you're still trapped in projection. And that awareness is the first step toward building something real with someone real.